So, you've just picked up your Remington 870. You've got the gun, ammunition, cleaning supplies, everything you need to make the thing go bang. But what about when you don't want it to go bang? While many aspects of responsible gun ownership focus on proper use of the gun, another key element is being able to prevent use of the gun by those who can't be trusted with it. An excellent way to do this is with a gun safe. In addition to keeping firearms out of the hands of unauthorized users, a gun safe will prevent theft and protect its contents from damage and corrosion. Guns can be safely stored inside, loaded, and ready for use by whoever you trust with the combination. Gun safes are really great. They're also really expensive. If you only have a few guns and not a lot of free money to spend, you may be looking for something that will prevent unauthorized use for a more affordable price. Or perhaps you do have a gun safe, but this isn't exactly something you can bring along on vacation or camping trips. In this video, I'll be going over some gun lock options for the Remington 870. Gun locks are devices that attach to a firearm, rendering it incapable of firing. They will not prevent theft and can certainly be defeated by a determined individual, so they're not a replacement for a gun safe if one is available. However, these locks are inexpensive, portable, and generally effective in preventing easy access to a functioning firearm. Some folks don't much care for them, but there are situations where any gun owner will need to be able to disable their firearms. Probably the most universally applicable reason to use a gun lock when a safe is not available is to reduce risk in the event of theft. An inoperable gun can be stolen just as readily as an unlocked one, of course. But while a disabled gun is merely another piece of loot, a burglar that finds a functioning weapon suddenly graduates to armed intruder. A dangerous loop in any scenario, the worst case would be if, by unlucky timing, you or someone else happens to catch a now armed thief in the act. Yes, I think there's someone in my house. No, I don't know. I don't know. Forced into a confrontation, the intruder panics, makes a desperate snap decision. Hold on, I think he's got a gun. Putting him on speaker, don't talk. And things go downhill from there. Now, had I been coming home from somewhere where civilian carry is not permitted, I would have literally been bringing a knife to a gunfight. Or, imagine it was an unarmed friend or neighbor checking on the suspicious activity, or your kid coming home from school. Disabling or locking up your guns goes a long way toward preventing this potentially disastrous scenario by acting as sufficient deterrent to convince the thief to steal it now and deal with the lock later. Another reason you may need to lock up your guns when they're not in use is to prevent kids from getting into them and hurting themselves. Now, there are many in the shooting community who deride gun locks as child safety devices, calling them a poor replacement for proper parenting. I would certainly agree that the best thing you can do is educate your kids about guns and satisfy their natural curiosity in a safe manner under adult supervision. That's the way I was raised, and I'm very grateful for that fact. And you can't deny that mature, responsible kids who were trusted with access to firearms have certainly used them to prevent many horrible crimes. However, many kids are too young to fully understand the difference between real guns and their fantasy counterparts in toys, games, or other entertainment. Now, I don't support the violent entertainment creates mass murderers idea. Video games and movies are fantasy, which by itself harms no one. An unhealthy obsession with violent entertainment may be a warning sign, but for problems that already exist. I'm speaking here of children who simply aren't developed enough to understand the conceptual difference between Nerf and Glock, or who just can't be trusted due to simple immaturity, or more serious personality, behavioral, or mental issues. Even if your kids have been raised to respect firearms and to use them responsibly when necessary, their friends may not have had the benefit of the same upbringing, and you don't want them stumbling across an unlocked firearm while playing. The same might go for the kids of friends or relatives you're staying with while traveling. In that scenario, even if you have a gun safe at home, you won't be able to access it. Or maybe you don't have any kids yet, but you have some friends who, with a little liquid encouragement, tend to get just as untrustworthy. Here in Idaho, where guns are normal household items, it's standard procedure to lock them all up or hide them away before you throw a party. It's not paranoia, it's just common sense. Or hey, maybe you've got crazy Uncle Joe coming over for a visit, and you don't want him to grab your shotgun, run out on the front porch, and start blasting away wildly every time he hears a noise outside. I could go on, but the bottom line, and I think I've made my point in it, is that there are always situations where firearms need to be either locked up or disabled, and there won't always be a gun safe nearby. As the owner, it's your responsibility to be prepared. The first device I'll be showing is known as a trigger block. These devices attach to the trigger guard and obstruct the trigger. Many of these use keys, but there are also variations that open with a combination. Combination locks are nice if you want a number of people to be able to access the gun, or if you're worried about keeping track of keys. For my 870, I use a Regal model RTL06. This lock is specifically intended for the 870 and other Remington firearms with similar trigger groups, and is included with many new 870s. I like this device because it is very effective, but still goes on and comes off quickly and easily. It places a block behind the trigger to completely immobilize it, and also covers a safety and slide release. It still allows the magazine to be loaded or unloaded, a feature I really like, but otherwise the gun is completely disabled. Now, one safety concern with any device that locks through the trigger guard is the possibility of an accidental trigger pull during removal, especially when trying to get this off as quickly as possible under stress. Of course, this will only result in a discharge if the safety is off and there's a shell in the chamber. Not the smartest way to store a gun, but it's still within the realm of possibility. But since the Regal trigger lock covers a safety, this scenario can be prevented with a very simple modification. These are 3/8" vinyl stick-on pads used to prevent cupboard doors from slamming or to keep small appliances from slipping around on a counter. Most hardware stores will have these for just a few dollars a pack. One of these pads at this inside corner of the trigger lock will automatically push the cross bolt from the fire position into the safe position whenever the lock is installed on the gun, thus preventing accidental trigger pulls. Another thing I've done with my Regal trigger lock is to place a brief message inside it. This is just 7-point Arial font in a Word document printed out on the label stock. It reads, "If this lock was installed on a firearm you received, the firearm is stolen. Please contact the police," and then it has my name and phone number. In the event someone steals my shotgun and either takes it to a professional to have the lock removed or simply sells it lock and all, the smith or buyer will see the note and know the gun has been stolen. It's not a guarantee, but it certainly doesn't hurt my chances. One potential weak point with the Regal RTL06 is that if you know what you're doing, you can get to the mechanism and forcibly disengage it pretty easily. Now, chances are, kids, drunk buddies, or random punks looking for something worth drug money won't know about this little detail. If you're prone to misplacing your keys and you don't want to have to pay a professional to remove the lock in that event, you'll probably be fine leaving this as is. However, if you do want to eliminate this vulnerability, a spot of JB Weld or something similar between this metal plate and the plastic cover should do the job. Trigger blocks are a good way to go, but they do have a couple downsides. For one, any device that covers the slide release can make it difficult to tell if there's a shell in the chamber, unless you have a flashlight or really good eyesight. Also, some stocks or grips that butt up to or cover part of the trigger guard can interfere with the fit of some trigger locks. Another type of gun lock that doesn't have these drawbacks is the action lock. While trigger blocks disable the gun by obstructing the trigger and other controls, action locks disable a gun by keeping it from going into battery at all. On the 870, these impede the bolt and prevent it from closing. In this state, it is completely impossible for the gun to fire, since the locking block on the 870 will only allow the pin to extend past the breech face once the action is fully closed and the block is locked up into the barrel. One of the most common varieties of these are cable locks. This one came in the box with my Glock 31. Cable locks are popular for autoloading handguns, but the design is flexible enough to disable just about any type of action with a place for the cable to pass through, and even some without. A cable lock can be used to disable an 870 by passing it through the ejection and loading ports. This will keep the bolt from fully closing until the cable is removed. Because cable locks are so versatile, they're very easy to find. As with trigger blocks, there are also versions that open with a combination instead of a key. These may not always be marketed specifically as gun locks, but as long as it'll fit, a cable's a cable. These are a great option if you want one type of inexpensive lock that'll work for multiple firearms. Even if you have a proper gun safe at home, a couple of these will allow you to lock up whatever guns you bring along while traveling. Basic locks like these can be found for about $5 to $10 each, and some sporting goods stores and law enforcement organizations will even have these available for free. Here in the US, the National Shooting Sports Foundation developed a program called Project Child Safe. Under the Bush administration, this program received funding through the US Department of Justice to teach and promote firearm safety and to distribute free gun locks at educational events and through partnering law enforcement organizations. The Obama administration has since cut this government funding, and the program is now being supported solely by the firearms industry. This has reduced the availability of these materials, but free safety kits can still be obtained while supplies last. For more information and a list of law enforcement partners in your area, visit projectchildsafe.org or follow the link in the description. Project Child Safe is a great program. I'd encourage my American viewers to write your elected officials and ask them to push for restored funding for it. Not just for free stuff, but as an all too rare source of honest, practical public education on firearm safety. To my foreign viewers, if there are similar programs in your country, please tell us in the comments below, and I'll add annotations and links for them. While cable locks are versatile, inexpensive, and generally effective at keeping kids, drunk buddies, or nutty politicians from hurting themselves, they aren't all that tough for a determined individual to cut off. Some folks like these locks because the length of the cable can be used to secure the gun to a pipe or other anchor like a bike lock. But that would just give a thief even more motivation to cut the cable right there. As a tougher alternative to cable locks, the Remington 870 can be disabled in the exact same way using a standard padlock or combination lock with an appropriately sized shackle. Cutting through this hardened steel shackle is far more involved than snipping a cable, especially while it's still on the gun. One tip with these locks is to wrap the body and or shackle in electrical tape, flexible tubing, or heat shrink sheathing to help protect the gun's finish. All the locks I have for my firearms are keyed, and some of these keys can look pretty similar. I can keep track of which is which by their position on a keychain easily enough, but that's not an ideal situation if someone else needs to unlock my firearms in an emergency. A tip for keeping track of multiple keys is to paint the fobs to match their respective locks. You can also use paint or colored tape to differentiate locks that are the same color. By the way, while I'm here, if you're ever tempted to buy Now spray paint because it's really cheap, don't. It's absolute crap. In some cases though, Locks that are the same model can use the same key, especially if they were sold together or part of the same production run. The final type of device I want to mention in this video is the integrated lock. These are keyed security devices built into the gun itself that allow the owner to disable it without a separate lock. Remington used to equip some 870 models with an integrated security system featuring a special type of safety button that could be locked in the safe position with an included J-shaped key. Thanks to Romeo Papa over on the Rem870.com forums for digging out his old ISS trigger group for some pictures. By and large, gun enthusiasts dislike integrated locking devices on any type of firearm, for good reason. They are not nearly as effective as a conventional gun lock, but increase manufacturing costs and add unneeded complexity and additional points of failure. There have even been cases of integrated safety devices on various firearms malfunctioning and disabling the gun due to recoil or impacts. In addition, while the presence of a cable lock or a trigger block is rather hard to miss on the gun, it is far too easy to forget that an integrated lock is still engaged when the gun is needed. If you have an ISS-equipped 870, my recommendation is to just get rid of it. Luckily, unlike the integrated systems on some other firearms, the 870 ISS can be replaced with a standard safety in minutes by simply replacing 3 inexpensive parts. For a little extra, you can also add an aftermarket large head safety button that may be easier to manipulate under stress. J.D. McGuire, Remington certified armorer and owner of AIMP Tactical Custom Shotguns, has a good video showing how to replace an ISS safety. Well, I hope you found something useful here. I want to reiterate that no gun lock will match the protection of a gun safe or remove the need for proper education. But when the former is unavailable and the latter absent or insufficient, these locking devices are effective yet inexpensive ways for gun owners to fill those gaps. As always, I welcome questions and comments on what I've presented. If you have some other preferred device or method for securing your firearms, please share it in the comments below. I may well revisit the subject in the future. I've also tried some new things in this video, so I'd love to hear feedback. Until next time, have fun, stay safe, and please help to protect all of our rights to own and use firearms for protection and recreation by speaking out, educating others, and acting as more than just a negative stereotype. Or hey, maybe you have crazy Uncle Joe coming over for a visit and you don't want him to grab your shotgun, run out on the front porch, and start blasting away wildly every time he hears a noise outside. I could go on, but the bottom line, and I think I've made my point here, is that there are always situations where firearms need to be either locked up or disabled. And there won't always be a gun safe nearby. As the owner, it's your responsibility to be prepared. Last freaking word.